How many of you guys have switched some price tags before? Well, you may be a thief, but at least you're honest. Obviously, if you switched a $10 price tag for something that should have been 20, you stole $10. So don't think that that's okay. You may think it's a little easier because, yeah, I went through the checkout line, yeah, I paid something for it, and everything's overpriced anyway. You hear that, license? But obviously that is not only illegal, it is wrong. Well, what about if you bought something and used it for a month or two, and one day you're kind of in a financial bind and you think, what can I take back? Oh, that blender, I don't ever use that. I'll tell Walmart it's broken. You take it back, you might as well stole it. They're going to put it in the warehouse, sell it as junk. They've lost money on it. That is wrong. What about stealing from where you work? Well, I had a lady in the class one time, she said she works at a Walgreens here in town. She and her boss closed the store every night, and almost every night her boss will say, Renee, is there anything you need? I'm going to get a few things, so if you need something, it's okay. Go ahead. Now, why is she trying to get Renee to do what she's doing? Then Renee won't tell on her, huh? It's their little secret. Now, what do you think? Is it okay to steal if your boss says you can? No. That doesn't make it right at all, does it? Well, how many of you have ever sneaked into a movie without paying? Okay, many of you have. Well, you might as well stole $10 or whatever it cost. You know, these are people who gain a livelihood from selling tickets. And if it was your store, obviously you want everybody to pay, right? So what must you do in order to be genuine? That's right, you must pay. Well, what about borrowing money from somebody and never paying them back? Any of you have somebody that owes you some money right now? You're probably never going to see it, are you? And you feel like they might as well stole it. So if you owe anybody, be responsible and pay them back. What about, say you backed into somebody's car door in the parking lot? Are you going to leave a note and tell them that you're going to be responsible? Or would you just drive away? Pardon? You've left a note. You did the right thing. Well, obviously, if someone backed into your door, you would want them to be responsible. So what must you do in order to be genuine? That's right. You must live by the golden rule. Well, what about misrepresenting something you're trying to sell? When I was a 15-year-old kid, my brother was 18, he had a 1956 Ford car he wanted to sell that had lots of miles on it. So in those days, the cars had odometer cables. He crawled underneath it, disconnected that cable, hooked it up to a drill, wound it backwards until it said 80,000 instead of 115. Now, what was his purpose to do that? To get more money. It's just an act of stealing, isn't it? Anytime you misrepresent something, you're stealing. What about goofing off on the job? Speaking of that, I remember my first job out of college. I mentioned I was an exterminator. This was in McAllister. The first day on my job, they put me with an old man to go out and learn how to do this termite business. It was a hot summer day. We crawled under this old lady's house to exterminate her termites. Well, it's cool under there. So when we got underneath there, this old man says, now let me tell you how you do this. We're underneath this floor, see? He says, you want to spend a little time under here, and you want to make a little noise. So he got the shovel and he banged on the floor joist so they can hear you working, you know. Now, they might look under here to see if you've done anything, and so you want to turn a couple of shovelfuls of dirt over by this door at least so they'll see that there's some fresh dirt here. You're supposed to go all the way around the foundation, you see, and fill that hole full of chemical. But he turns over a couple right there. He puts his hand behind his head. He lays down and takes a 30-minute nap. I mean, I'm sitting under here with this old man, and he's over there taking a nap. Now, is that the way he would exterminate the termites at his house? No. So again, let's do the right thing. If you're an employer paying people $10 an hour and they're goofing off, they're on their cell phones or figuring up their budget or something for about 15 minutes out of every hour, they're stealing $2.50 an hour, aren't they? You wouldn't want them to do that to you, so what should you do in order to be genuine? Do the right thing. That's right. Different scenarios. How many of you have gone to the store, paid for something, and the clerk gave you back too much money? How many of you ever had that experience? Well, most of you have. Now, come on, be honest with me. Remember, I asked you this morning to be honest. How many of you kept the extra money? Okay, most of you did. So my question is, why? What reason did you give yourself to make it okay to keep money that you know you didn't deserve? Miss, you had your hand up. What was your reason you gave yourself? He was already gone. Have you ever been back to that store since then? Yeah, you have. So what's the reason you didn't give it back to them then? Oh, she'd already spent it. Well, okay, but let's hear from you. What was your excuse to keep...
Because I bought something else.
But you had to have an excuse to keep that extra money.
Hey, that's her fault. She should learn how to count.
There we go. That's what I've been waiting to hear, because that's what I always hear. It was their fault. Now, every one of you that raised your hand on this, I want you to listen. I teach this class in many places. I have a juvenile class in Oklahoma City. Not long ago, I asked this same question. How many would keep the money? Two girls raised their hand. One of them was Sandy. I said, okay, Sandy, what reason would you give for keeping the money that you know you didn't earn? She said what you said. It's their fault. Okay, well, let me tell you what happened this morning in the class. I'm talking about the class in Oklahoma City. This actually happened. Most of the adults bring their kids, you know, these are juveniles, drop them off, and they'll hand my wife or I the money. That morning, a father dropped his daughter off, handed me a wad of money, and he immediately left. I started counting the money, and there was $70 there. The juvenile class only cost $50, so there was an extra $20 there. So I told that class about what had happened. And Sandy, who had raised her hand, said, yeah, that was my dad. Oh, it was your dad, huh? Okay then, Sandy, according to what you just said, it was your dad's fault, so I could keep your dad's money, right? Now it's becoming a little more personal, you see. So now she has to think about it. Is this still going to apply? Well, she had already committed herself, right? So she couldn't change now, so she says, yeah. You notice she didn't say yes. She said, yeah. In other words, I don't want to say this, but I've already got myself in this mess, so I better say yeah. So she said yes. And then I said, but Sandy, that's the $20 bill he was going to give you Monday morning for your lunch money. Now, what do you wish I would do with your money, Sandy? Now it's very personal, and finally she had to think and hang her head and say, give it back. And so, Sandy, what must you do the next time someone gives you extra money that you know you didn't earn in order for you to be genuine and to live by the golden rule that you raised your hand and said, yes, that's a good rule for me to live by? What must you do, Sandy? Give it back.